The Energy Information Association took a study and found out that 71% of Arizona's power comes from one singular nuclear power plant, the Palo Verde power plant. That nuclear power plant also generates energy for 4 other states around us. Nuclear power plants are these amazing high-efficiency reactors that each can generate tons of electricity, and multiple reactors can go into each singular power plant. Today, I will be going over 3 main points. How reactors function, how the nuclear power plants function, how high efficiency these power plants are, and how they cause less pollution than coal and gas power plants. So first off, my first point of discussion is how do these reactors function? Some of you may know, some of you may not know. But they're actually quite simple, as long as you think heating one singular substance is not too complicated of a process. See, an anonymous source said that nuclear reactors are one, I don't know if I can say the word or not because I'm at Christian school, way to boil water. Now, many scientists agree with this because that's practically exactly what those do. Now, boiling water is a very simple way to put it, but what actually happens is uranium sits in a vat around with water with control rods in it. Now, neutrons are fired into the uranium, and the uranium becomes really hyper and ecstatic, and then it'll break off and throw neutrons to other places. So these neutrons, as they're flying, hit other uranium and cause the exact same thing to happen. This reaction keeps going, and keeps going, until it generates so much heat up to 520 degrees Fahrenheit, 300 degrees over the boiling point of water. It boils the water, and this water is moving extremely fast, and it goes through the nuclear plant as it goes through pipes and into a turbine. It spins the turbine extremely fast over and over again, all through the day, and that spins a coil which generates the energy. Now, after the water is done in the turbine, it will go back through a cooling system, be cooled down in water, poured back into where the uranium is, and the process happens again. This occurs all throughout the day, at all times, and that's how these reactors are so efficient. They continually go nonstop. Next, you're going to learn my second point. How are these reactors high efficiency? Well, a collection of data at e360.edu discovered that nuclear power plants run 92% of the year, compared to coal and gas, 50%, compared to renewable resources at only 35%, each one getting lower, except nuclear, the only one in the 90% range, the only A+. These percentages show that nuclear power plants are more efficient in their time, as they're always running, instead of not running. Now, they're also more efficient at cost, as they cost less per kilowatt hour of energy generated. Kilowatt hours are the basic unit of how much energy is produced, is how many kilowatts are produced per hour. Now, to produce 1 kilowatt hour of energy, nuclear is 2.4 cents. That is less than anything else, and it's also the most constant. It has barely changed in the last 50 years. Coal started really high, and it's gone really down. It's about 2.8 cents. Gas started pretty low, and it's slowly going up. Right now, it's on a pretty steep incline at 3.2 cents. And then petroleum has just extremely ramped up. It's the yellow line, I guess you can't see it that well, but it's up here. 22 cents. Nuclear is down here, 2 cents. 10 times the price for petroleum, which is the most used. Which relates very closely to my Bible verse, Ephesians 5:16, which says, "Look carefully at how you walk, not unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time, because the days are evil." But nuclear, running most of the time with the least cost, is making best use of its time, is being the most efficient, and following along Ephesians 5:15-16 perfectly. Now, let's look at some comparisons. If you can see, it's supposed to be pretty hard to see, this is how much uranium it takes, small little bit down here, to produce the same amount of oil and the same amount of coal. They're about I approximately made them the size. 2.2 pounds of uranium generates the same amount of energy as 350 pounds of oil, and 2,000 pounds of coal. Almost 1,000 times more efficient at how much it uses, and 170 times more efficient than oil is. In almost every single way, price, time of maintenance, and amount of product used to create energy, nuclear beats every single other power plant. Now, nuclear power plants are actually very environmental friendly. Now, how could that be? Nuclear and environment. Not really a sentence said much without the word not in there too. But, in fact, they are actually safer and than any other one. So, my old chemistry teacher said nuclear is the only way to go. I agree with this, because that's what my entire thing is about. Nuclear is the only way to go from here for our power generation. The reason is because other power plants generate more radiation. You heard me, radiation. Not just pollution, radiation. More than a radiative material. So the way this is because in coal, being the most hidden or unknown source of radiation, is there is a bunch of uranium and thorium inside the coal. When coal's burned, it releases that into the atmosphere. Once in the atmosphere, it's known as fly ash, radiative material throughout our atmosphere and fly. Now, what you may not have known is that nuclear does not burn any of its nuclear materials. It just kind of sits there, and the neutrons just transfer around into the control rods. It doesn't actually burn any of the material into the atmosphere. It sits there until it's completely useless. Now, once it's useless, it's called depleted. But a depleted uranium is still very, very harmful. See, it is still very radioactive and can still easily kill a lot of things if spread around. But how is this prevented? So, uranium, once it's depleted, is thrown into storage containments like this, made out of lead to keep the radiation from getting out, and then stored in these huge vaults in low environment zones, so these vaults do not get broken, the uranium does not get out, and then the uranium sits there. Sits there for how long? Indefinitely? Pretty much, but not quite. So uranium has a half-life, which means it's going to go down by half of its radioactive material is going to become harmless after a certain amount of time. The most common form of uranium, it's 4.46 billion years for that to happen, so it's going to take a long time to become completely harmless. But other ones get a little smaller, 704 million years, 245,000 years. But as long as it's contained like this, it will not harm the environment whatsoever. It's safely stored in vaults and will at some point become completely dangerous, not harmful to the environment whatsoever. And God tells us to take a look at the earth, and he put us here to work it and take care of it. So if nuclear power plants generate less pollution, radiation, and sit harmlessly, it is better for our earth than coal or gases. So obviously you've heard of nuclear disasters and these ruptures in Chernobyl and Fukushima and 3 Mile Island. But a little story from Edward Teller shows us that on May 7th, a few weeks after the accident in 3 Mile Island, I was the one in Washington to refute some propaganda by Ralph Nader. Jane Fonda and their kind were spewing media in their attempt to frighten people away from nuclear power. I'm 71 years old, working 20 hours a day. The strain was too much on me. The next day I suffered a heart attack. Maybe it's known that I'm the only person to have been hurt by the nuclear reactor exploding at 3 Mile Island. No, nuclear reactors don't hurt people. People do. See, nuclear reactors are very controlled, very contained, and are very safe. They have fail-safes to turn off in case something happens problematic. But it's when people decide to not listen to other people, make tests on nuclear power plants, and don't listen to the people that are like, oh, if you do this, it's practically going to be like a bomb, so don't do that. And they do it anyway, because they're like, ooh, let's try to get some more efficiency and power out of this. And then the nuclear reactors explode. People are the problem, not nuclear reactors. So, today I went over how they work, how nuclear is much more efficient, and how they're much less pollutant than any other power plant. Nuclear can improve overall air quality, reducing the amount of deaths every single year of people dying by air pollution, and overall make the environment healthier. There is no right to complain about air quality or people dying by air pollution if we have a clear way to help reduce this and mitigate it massively. Go nuclear.